Now, is there enough light? Do you want to switch one of the lights? Can you still see that all right? Yeah. Right. Oh, maybe just one. Yeah. Yes. Thanks, Beth. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about the earliest Hebrew tradition of ruach, life, spirit, and the early Greek traditions of wellness and reflective life, philosophy as a form of medicine. And now we're just going to shift briefly to look at the development of the actual medical perspective in Greek thought. We obviously can't do everything regarding that, but we can have a look at the Hippocratic Oath. This guy, Hippocrates, was a medical practitioner, and he's said to have come up with this particular oath for his own practice. It's a little bit hard to read, sorry about that, I didn't pay attention to the size of the font. But you can see it is rooted in a religious perspective. I swear by Apollo the physician, and Asclepius, who is actually Asico's father, and Hygeia and Panacea and all the gods and goddesses as my witnesses, that according to my ability and judgment I will keep this oath and this contract, to hold him who taught me this art equally dear to me as my parents, to be a partner in life with him, and to fulfil his needs when required. So it's really interesting, isn't it, that the medical art grew out of a relational sense of formation and training. It was not merely a mentoring relationship, but actually a deeper relationship, a communal relationship, almost like a familial relationship, which was very similar to the Epicurean approach to doing things. To look upon his offspring as equals to my own siblings, to teach them this art, if they shall wish to learn it without fee or contract, and that by the set rules, lectures, and every other mode of instruction, I will impart a knowledge of the art to my own women, and those of my teachers, and to students bound by this contract, and having sworn this oath to the law of medicine, but to no others. Just on that gender question, it's notable that Epicurus actually did receive women as disciples as part of his community, which earned him ill repute. He was considered to be someone who took advantage of prostitutes because he allowed women as part of his school. And we actually don't know whether there's any veracity to that claim or not. Some say it is likely that there were sexual favours exchanged in the community. Others say it's affirmative. I will use those dietary regimens which will benefit my patients according to my greatest ability and judgment, and I will do no harm or injustice to them. I will do no harm. And that's become central to many medical professions. First, do no harm. That's certainly one of our own values as well in spiritual care. I will not give a lethal drug to anyone if I am asked, nor will I advise such a plan, and similarly I will not give a woman a pessary to cause an abortion. In purity and according to divine law will I carry out my life and my art. I will not use the knife even upon those suffering from stones, but I will leave this to those who are trained in this craft. So referral is right there in the core of medical values at the beginning. Into whatever homes I go, I will enter them for the benefit of the sick, avoiding any voluntary act of impropriety or corruption, including the seduction of women or men, whether they are free men or slaves. So that's very contextually relevant, given what we've just been watching. It was fascinating the way the judge focused in on the capacity of the defendant to reflect, wasn't it? To show good judgment.
Because he didn't really even admit to himself, so...
That's right. And it was interesting, wasn't it, too, that the judge highlighted that the defence never offered an explanation for the behaviour, and that was obviously on the basis that he pleaded not guilty. So the court was never offered an opportunity to understand why the offences may have taken place. So the values of deep reflection, rational reflection on the process are there in the court, but the process of law excluded that in this instance because there was no acceptance of guilt. So you take a risk, don't you, when you take a stand in court, in that sense. But, you know, yeah, Beth, go.
About that. The phrase wounded healer is a well accepted one, and one of the common cries of survivors of all kinds of abuse, but particularly sexual abuse, is that perpetrators defend their actions or dismiss the experience forever.
Yeah.
But the survivor is left to do years and years of therapy. And actually, if you are going to avoid reoffending or playing out, that your call to personal reflection is massive. But then there's a kind of a consequential link to those who have been very deeply wounded and then listen to that work become healing agents because of the reflection.
Yeah.
That is, but not without it.
Yes.
And on God.
Yeah. Thank you. Whatever I see or hear in the lives of my patients, whether in connection with my professional practice or not, which ought not to be spoken of outside, I will keep secret as considering all such things to be private confidentiality, another core value of any kind of pastoral interaction. So long as I maintain this oath faithfully and without corruption, may it be granted to me to partake of life fully in the practice of my art, gaining the respect of all men for all time. However, should I transgress this oath and violate it, may the opposite be my fate. So much for the ancient Hippocratic oath. It's found in this form in many places today. It's not found in all hospitals or in all medical practices, but some do still maintain it. I'll just read a few stanzas. I swear to fulfil to the best of my ability and judgment this covenant. What's the difference?
Taken out of God.
There is no religious basis for the modern Hippocratic oath. It stands in the reflective reason of the individual practitioner. This is my responsibility, and this reflects an Epicurean approach, which is materialist. I don't defer my responsibility to the gods. I take responsibility for it. Now, it may seem like an abandonment of religion. It's not necessarily, because there are many religious medical practitioners who swear this oath. It is merely a positive statement of, I am the practitioner, it is my responsibility to behave in this way. I will respect the hard-won scientific gains of those physicians in whose steps I walk, and gladly share such knowledge as is mine with those who are to follow. You can hear the ancient values there, expressed in a way that is applicable to our culture. I will apply for the benefit of the sick all measures that are required, avoiding those twin traps of over-treatment and therapeutic nihilism. There's a whole conversation that can take place around that. But you can hear the way the ethical conversation that was fairly simplistic in Hippocrates' time in terms of I won't deal out death-dealing drugs, I won't cause an abortion, I won't do some of those actions that were considered by those practitioners to be causing harm to those in their care. Modern ethics and medical practice still seeks to practice the underlying concern for doing no harm, but of course our ethical understanding of various medical practices is different. Now we would consider at times and under certain circumstances an abortion is necessary for the health of those concerned. And we can debate about those on various different bases. So the modern Hippocratic Oath is very much a thing, and it's sometimes used in full like that. In other medical practices, it can take the form of a practitioner pledge that has elements of the Hippocratic Oath, but not necessarily all of it. So you might have something like this. As a member of the medical profession, I solemnly pledge to dedicate my life to the service of humanity. The health and well-being of my patient will be my first consideration. I will respect the autonomy and dignity of my patient. I will maintain the utmost respect for human life, and so on and so forth. So a statement of core values and ethics in practice has been brought down into the modern day from the Greek tradition of reflecting on this. We were talking earlier about underlying values that can be truly, and are in this case truly secular now in nature, and secular means available to everyone. It doesn't mean non-religious. It means it's a public space in which all practitioners are invited to participate. That's what we mean by secular. It's in fact what we mean by secular spiritual care as well. Does anyone want to comment on those? Have you encountered them out there in the real world? Have they formed your practice in any way? All these slides will be up on ARC too.
Just a question, do you think the old oath was more about the practitioner's responsibility and rights as a practitioner, rather than we're looking more at the rights of individuals now? More, does that encompass?
Do you mean?
Are they looking more at the, like, for instance, abortion and those sort of things? That we're looking more at the rights of the human being now to say how they will be medically looked after, rather than more.
So
is that what is happening more with the modern way in which the oaths are seen? Like, because back in the old oath, it's more the practitioner and his right as a practitioner and what he was going to do for the people.
I
think, is it more turned a bit more now? Rather, it's the, well, I've got Google and everything, and that's the women's rights and everything. It's more how we want to be looked after and how we expect
to look
after us.
It's a really, really good question. I think I would just respond initially by saying I think perhaps there's been a turn towards greater consideration of contextual relevance in asking ethical questions. So rather than applying an ethical norm to all situations, a norm that's been agreed upon by a collective group of some kind, whether that's a medical group or a religious group or whatever. So for example, abortion is wrong in all cases, and that's applied to all cases. A modern worldview has come to pay more attention to contextual complexity. And so the rights of the unborn child are a thing, the rights of the mother are a thing, and the impact on society is a thing. And ethics takes all of those things into account now. So it may appear, in a sense, that there's been a turn towards the subject, in a sense, that every human right. In fact, I think it's an indication of a turn towards context, that paying deeper attention to the variations in context that enable us to argue either way. So questions like, who has a greater right to life, the unborn child or the mother, in a case where proceeding with the birth would kill the mother? We pay deep attention to those questions and take them really seriously, rather than just applying a norm. Is that kind of where you're going with the question?
I was just thinking that we seem to be more looking at individuals' rights these days. As is that thing. Just a question whether you think whether that's what's happening.
I think we're paying more attention to context than we are to overarching sort of meta values. That's I think how I'll respond to that. So we have this incredible Greek tradition of concern for human flourishing, human wellness, and the full application of philosophy and medical science was brought to bear in the pursuit of that. And it was variously religious or non-religious. but it permeated Greek culture and into Hellenistic times, and it was very much there in the formation of the young Jesus of Nazareth, who lived, as we said earlier, firmly entrenched in a Hellenistic culture. Although one far removed from the centre of Hellenistic culture, nevertheless impacted by colonial presence. Questions, comments before we move on? As we start to move towards thinking about the way Jesus' mind perhaps would have been formed by his cultural context, I'm glad you're here, Beth, because you might be able to chime in here as our resident New Testament scholar. Jesus would have been aware as an adult of the impact of Greek culture. I'm going to assume that he would have been aware. I don't know, maybe he wouldn't have, but I would suspect as a reflective person, as he seems to be accounted as in the Gospels, he would have been aware of the broader Hellenistic impact on his understanding of human health and flourishing. But he would also have been aware and is said to have been very much formed by the prophetic tradition in the Hebrew Bible. And so we might consider prophetic statements like these to have been formative for Jesus in his understanding of his own approach to human relationships and indeed to healing and wellness. In Jeremiah, "My joy is gone, grief is upon me, my heart is sick. Hark, the cry of my poor people from far and wide in the land. Is the Lord not in Zion? Why have they provoked me to anger with their images, with their foreign idols? For the hurt of my poor people I am hurt, I mourn, and dismay has taken hold of me. Is there no balm in Gilead? Is there no physician there? Why then has the health of my poor people not been restored?" The implication being that there is balm in Gilead, that there are physicians present. Why is healing not present for the people of God? There are a number of reasons for the poor state of health there, implicit in those words. Can you pluck them out and tell us what they might be?
They're not mindful of the poor, is that what you're asking? They transfer the head of the poor into the dust?
Well, that's the next reading. You've jumped ahead of him. Yes.
Sorry.
I should have covered that.
People were worshipping the foreign idols
Yeah.
and turned away from God.
Absolutely. So there's a sense of wellness and flourishing is situated in right relationship with Yahweh. If that is maintained, then we have wellness. If it is diverted people's attention is diverted to false idols, false beliefs, false ways of understanding God, false ways of worshipping God, then poverty and the absence of wellness sets in. Can you hear the similarities to the Greek understanding of emotion? Emotion was based on right belief. Good emotion, happiness, was based on right belief. Suffering was based on wrong belief. In a sense, here it is present in the Hebrew worldview. If you get your relationship with Yahweh right, the result will be a flourishing life. Examine your life. Yeah? If you don't, maybe there are some other results for you. You want to challenge that or ask a question? Yeah? Go, Beth.
Yeah, I think that it's deeper than just belief. I think the worldview that's here and also in the Greek worldview is that our health is linked to the well-being of the gods. And when the gods are really cranky, we get sick. When the gods are sick, we get sick. And here, in Jeremiah, God is hurt because of the treatment. When we heard before, we heard God's actually sick. And so how then can all of humanity, how can humanity, how can creation flourish when God is hurt and grieved and sickened by the poor, because it's actually God's life that we're living. And I think that kind of sense, it's not like, well, God's over there and we're over here and we have bad relationships. God sends something, God sends sickness to it. It's actually much more integrated worldview, both in Hebrew and I think in Greek as well. The sense of our lives are bound up, our health is bound up with the health or the unhealth of God. And God is really sick.
Yeah, I would say, I would agree. I think it's a whole spectrum of approaches, because I think the gods are also represented as tyrants in the tradition. You know, so I think you're right, absolutely, and that's represented in the Amos reading right here. Because they sell the righteous for silver and the needy for a pair of sandals, they who trample the head of the poor into the dust of the earth, and push the afflicted out of the way. Father and son go down to the same girl, so that my holy name is profaned. I will press you down in your place. And then Amos is full of the pain of God because of the poverty and the suffering of God's people. Yeah, absolutely. And it's all mixed up in that. I think Epicurus would perhaps disagree. I think he would say, no, the gods are a distraction. That's a total distraction. The suffering is yours. Understand yourself. So we have that whole spectrum of understandings. Yeah, absolutely. And all of this would have been mixed was mixed in the world of Jesus. You know, all of these different understandings of God, the gods, the self, and what it means to live a healthy and just and flourishing life. Jesus of Nazareth. There's a strong tradition, I would say, within the Gospels of a Jesus who challenged the beliefs of his time and that led to human suffering and revealed the full humanity of those who were excluded and suffering by virtue of his capacity to relate to them as equal and fellow human beings. The explosion of beliefs in pursuit of healing is deeply resonant with the Hellenistic purpose of understanding beliefs in order to eradicate those that are erroneous and lead to problematic emotional responses. In Jesus' case, says Jürgen Moltmann, the Lordship of God drives out of creation the powers of destruction, which are demons and idols, and heals the created beings who have been damaged by them. The health of all created beings is the result, health of body and soul, individual and community, human beings and nature. That is why people who gather around Jesus are shown to be not so much sinners as sick.
Yeah.
What do you think about what Jürgen Moltmann says about the healing ministry of Jesus? The Gospels are great swathes of healing traditions and the casting out of the demons. We talked earlier about the nature of evangelism, and I named it as the proclamation of a new way of being, a new kingdom. In effect, Moltmann is arguing that in casting out demons and healing the sick, Jesus was announcing a new way of being. What do you think?
I think there's an element that I agree with in that, but I think also we need to be really cautious and careful that we don't understand everything about God, and there's got to be room for allowing him space to be himself. And to give you an example, a friend of mine, his wife passed away of cancer, and he's got 3 kids, and people were coming to him and saying, your wife, just believe. Even his family said to him, you should just believe, and she'll be healed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And his whole approach, which I personally was really impacted by, was he said, well, God will heal her if he me personally, it's
Yeah,
my
yeah,
view.
absolutely.
I look at that and I think, okay, I understand what the writer's saying here, but also let's bring balance and allow God to be God. It's not like maybe there's healing in other ways, and I know I'm talking about physical healing,
Yep.
and I like what he's mentioned here about soul, body, health of body and soul.
Mhm.
Maybe Jesus will bring healing to someone through suffering.
Yep.
And we don't understand the greater concept of that.
So what you're identifying is an inherent risk in creating an automatic connection between faith and a particular type of healing. And that risk is that in fact the person can become the object of our blame for their own suffering. The classic is, you know, taking Jesus' words to say, when he says to various people, your faith has healed you, we then can take those words and say, well, you're not being healed because you don't have enough faith. What I'm hearing from you is that there are some risks inherent in too simplistically understanding the connections.
And I'm on a journey myself with this, so
Yep.
I don't really, that's why it's great to be at college.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
because I don't know the answer to it.
Yep.
There's just different views on it, and
Yep.
I just feel a caution within me for myself, I think,
Yep.
as you say.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so it's a mistake, for example, to understand death as failure. A failure of God or a failure of us. Because in fact we understand more and more as we understand ourselves as living organisms that death is necessary in order for life itself to flourish. It's part of spirituality.
Even the death of Christ himself.
Right. You know, when Jesus embraced humanness in all its fullness, he embraced death, even though he was terrified of it. Yeah. So you're right. You're right to raise that. What is human flourishing? What is health? And in the Christological sense, then, what is the kingdom of God or the reign of God? How do you speak of it? Yeah.
So I don't want to keep going on, but if I
Why not? Why not?
so I don't want to hold the conversation, but just cannot balance that with that. I'm not saying, for me personally, I don't feel like, hey, we should now not pray for people and we should not believe that God can heal. I'm not saying that. Just thinking, I wonder if there's a bit of balance in it, of still allowing God to be God, still believe that God can heal anyone and anything, but just to, I guess, have a bit of an open view. Maybe on how that's where I'm at the moment. I may change my mind tomorrow. But.
Yeah. Does anyone else want to respond to that?
I did meet a lady who did get cancer, and she truly believed that it was because her husband was not a Christian, and he became a Christian because she got the cancer. And she asked me she connected with me and told me she was a Christian, so she asked me to pray for her, and which I did, and then some time lapsed, and she saw me again, and she told me that it was because I had prayed for her, she started to get better. And I said it wasn't me, it was your belief and what you had carried through. But it was interesting because I hadn't come across anyone so believing that her illness was because it was driven by her husband to become a Christian. And so God uses illness in that way too. But of course it just, sometimes I see a lot of people who actually cause their own sickness by suppressing their emotions, and so get whatever it is that they're going to get, some kind of sickness.
And what's critical, and there may be some truth to that, what's critical is that we don't allow that to become the basis upon which we judge one another for our sicknesses.
That's right.
Which we have a tendency to do.
Yes, you can.
We judge ourselves and each other because, as we've referred to in our prayer, there are things that we attribute to our own decision making that perhaps we shouldn't. And that may even include subconscious emotions that have been that are part of our physiology based on early childhood experiences that we're unaware of. Would you say anything about that, Beth?
Behind that is a connection that to be sick is shameful.
Right. Yeah. So, and that's precisely what I'm referring to in that sense, that hospitals are rife with it. Moral judgments about certain types of sickness and deserving of treatment or not deserving of treatment. Yeah. Yeah.
I have something to link, maybe you can put it on, of the popular diseases that it's okay to have, and the unsexy diseases. It's not, like irritable bowel syndrome.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Not
Or lung cancer caused by smoking.
Yeah, and we have, raise money for breast cancer, because breasts are like really popular in our, it's easy to get funding for that, but no one's got irritable bowel syndrome usually.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
But the thing is then, I know that sounds like a strange way to answer the question about early childhood experiences, but the link with sickness and shame then creates a link with childhood experiences that are understood to be shameful as well. And so Cardinal Pell and his victims that we've just been observing, who should be ashamed? Not his victims. Not
Sadly, they are, though.
they are.
Shame.
It's understood as shame, and sickness is understood as shame. Paul prays 3 times for some kind of physical response, and Jesus says, "Deal with it, buddy. It's not a problem. Sickness, no. What are you upset about? You're great, mate."
That's right. Go ahead.
Just what Todd was saying, I've seen this around like the evangelical world where there's pastors who they don't believe that our suffering and affliction is unintentional, I'd say.
Okay.
Yeah. And they refer to this text in 2 Corinthians 4:17 that says the affliction, our light momentary affliction is preparing for us an eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison. So what are your thoughts around that?
Read the passage again so that everyone can.
For this light momentary affliction is preparing for us an eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison. As we look not to the things that are seen, but to the things that are unseen. For the things that are seen are transient, but the things that are unseen are eternal.
Okay, so transient and eternal. Yeah.
I've heard a lot of evangelical, you'd say, pastors refer to this and the affliction that we experience as intentional or as a result of God's sovereignty.
As a form of sort of shaping us for the life to come, in a sense.
And
So
what
something-
Todd was saying really resonated with that, so I just wanted to know your thoughts around it.
Yeah.
So in that passage, it's not talking about sickness,
Yeah.
it's talking about violence.
Mm.
It's not talking about suffering violence,
Yeah.
not about the sickness of the body. And I think there's a real difference to the experience of injury that's inflicted intentionally from another person, crushed, perplexed, persecuted, struck down. That's physical violence in the passage. That stuff is really different to, I've discovered that I have pancreatic cancer.
Yeah. So you'd say their use of it is wrong? I just want to know your thoughts on it.
Absolutely.
I was just clarifying the context.
Absolutely.
You answered the question.
Well, I have an aversion to any understanding of God, that God intentionally inflicts suffering on people that God loves in order to fit them up for another existence. I tend to follow the concern of Jesus of Nazareth to bring life and to bring it abundantly, which seems to be, to me, and I haven't checked the Greek on this, but a present reality. Jesus was about a present interruption of the current reality with a new reality now. And I'll give you this, that the gospel does consider carefully that there is no ultimate resolution to human suffering and conflict in this existence. It is the very nature of existence that it is conflicted, and it's characterised by suffering. Yeah? And the theologian Paul Tillich said that very fact, the fact that we experience suffering, the fact that we experience conflict and violence, and that all of our ideas end up ultimately not resolving our problems, leads us to a question. What does resolve? What does resolve? Where are they resolved? They're not resolved in existence, ever. No matter how close we get to the perfect society or the perfect cure or human flourishing or whatever it is that we hope for, that even Jesus hoped for, it is not present in existence. The inference in Christianity, therefore, is it must be present beyond existence. There must be something beyond. And that's the nature of faith. Concern for the resolving of all the conflict of human existence in God beyond existence. And that's about as much as we can say. But we would never say that there is an intention by the divine agent, by God, to cause suffering in some kind of boot camp situation, preparation for the next life. That sounds to me, personally, like spiritual abuse.
Yeah.
I think it's about the nature of what is rather than some kind of divine purpose. I think that's the way I would want to talk about that. What do you think? What do others think?
Can I ask a question? Probably to Beth as well, if possible. Just had one thing that stood out to me. I don't know if you guys have heard of, I might not pronounce his name well, but Nick Vujicic. He's a guy who was born with no arms and no legs. How do you pronounce his name? Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah. Anyway, and I was reading his book, and I think one of the things that came out for him, if I interpret what he said right, is he used an example of someone was brought before Jesus, I think, as his disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? And then Jesus responded, neither this man nor his parents sinned, said Jesus, but this happened so that the works of God might be displayed in him. And when we're talking about sort of that, well, that fascinates me, and I think, wow, how did God allow that? That someone be born blind or afflicted, that God might be glorified through that situation? Have I interpreted that wrong?
New Testament scholar?
Yeah.
Well, I think, so the framework of both what, the 2 Corinthians 4 passage that you have raised and the John 9 passage that you've raised, that within the worldview, the interpretation was that any kind of imperfection of the body was a dishonour and a devaluation of the human person. And I think Jesus' actions, his explanation there, and also the Hebrew Old Testament affirmation of what is a human. A human is part of how God reveals his glory. We're made in the image of God, and it doesn't actually matter how many arms or legs we've got, or whether our eyes work, or any of those things that the ancient world said, oh, that cuts you down, you're subhuman, there's something wrong with you. The Christian affirmation, and specifically through the action and affirmation of Jesus there, say your humanity, which is much bigger than how many arms or legs you've got, or your eyes work. Your humanity is what's important, and is treasured, and something through which God can be glorified. So part of it is sort of countering or pushing back against this view in the world that if there's something wrong with your body, then you lose your humanity, whether it's through being born blind or whether it's through being flogged and enchained. I guess the question is, what do we believe about human beings whose bodies don't work perfectly, which would be everyone in this room? What do we believe about their humanity? Because Jesus is saying presentations of humanity, even those that have functional issues, are capable of glorifying God.
And there was a wrong belief. Explain. What was the wrong belief? It was caused by sin.
What about when Jesus told the, I think it was an infant that he healed, and he said, "Go and sin no more, so something worse doesn't happen to you." I don't know where that passage is, but I'm sure you've heard of it.
Yeah.
Go and sin no more.
So, well, you know, there's the story of the woman caught in adultery and so on and so forth as well. So, sorry, Ben?
I'm just asking if adultery is sickness.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's right. Well, I think the inference in Jürgen Moltmann's statement is that wherever you have any kind of behaviour that has a negative outcome for someone, whether it's called sin or otherwise in the culture, it's not treated as sin by Jesus. It's treated as something that works against the new way of being. You know, and so in that sense, Jesus is more concerned to welcome the person into the new being, the new way of being, than to judge sinfulness. Everyone else around him seems to be really concerned with who's sinning and who isn't, who's in, who's out, who's right according to the laws, who's not right, and so on. Whereas Jesus is saying, regardless, there's a new way, and you're welcome to participate in it. It's a great segue to what St. Irenaeus said, early church person. The glory of God is a human person fully alive. What does that mean to you? And it kind of relates to the question we were just talking about with no arms and no legs and blindness and so on. Can you be fully alive if you have no arms and no legs? Can you be fully alive if you're dying, if you're on your deathbed? Can you be fully alive if you have cancer? Can you be fully alive if you are born intersex and not assigned a particular gender at birth? What does it mean to be fully alive?
Which to me is to have that connection with God through the Holy Spirit.
Okay. Yeah. What does that mean?
Being born again by the Spirit.
What does that mean?
Flesh gives birth to flesh, Spirit gives birth to Spirit.
What does that mean?
That means having a connection with God. That means having a time.
What does it look like? What does it look like in a human life? Well, because they're all, with respect, they're great doctrinal statements, but what do they actually mean in a human life? What are we talking about?
Transformation. And mind.
Transformation from what to what?
Different thinking. Different heart.
So your identity is not linked to these things?
Your identity is not linked to, you're saying, to blindness or...
Yep.
So you're not identified with limit or
Yeah.
moral judgment based on your incapacity to contribute to society because of a certain physiological or mental state, or right? Yeah. So you're offered the dignity of full humanity in the midst of your limited humanness.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's what it means to be fully alive. Is that what you're saying? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some part of it, yes.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I think back to creation and how God created man and it was very good. And so I picture that walking through the garden in the cool of the evening, being at one no barriers. I think relationship with
It's a
God-
right relationship. Yeah.
Yeah.
And is that, how is that expressed? Is it only expressed through religious devotion to a God, or is it expressed through our relationships with one another, our environment, and
I think all the above,
yeah,
because I don't limit God.
Yeah.
I think God's in that tree just as much as,
Yeah.
and He's in us.
it's a right
We breathe,
relationship.
what's that, what was that word you said at the start?
Ruach.
Ruach, yeah.
Yeah,
Life.
so life.
Mm.
Yeah. So where there is right relationship, where there is flourishing, good relationship, depth of meaning, justice, human beings are fully alive. Whether they're sick or physically or mentally limited, or whether they're dying or being born, or we can live fully in all of those situations. I think that's what St. Irenaeus may have been getting at, and in fact, if God is anything, God is glorified in flourishing life. So we've kind of, what's the time? Do you want 5 minutes to grab a drink, go to the loo? Yeah, then we'll come back and do our last 40 minutes. We'll race through the last 2,000 years.